A very good morning to all the esteemed participants. It is an absolute delight to welcome each one of you at our 18th Sustainability Summit. We are now starting parallel sessions that would be running in several Hall 1 and Sovereign Hall 2. The delegates can access all the summit-related information by scanning the QR code provided in their summit notepad and badges. It is truly an honor and a privilege to welcome all of you for the session on Partnerships for EU-India Action on Circular Economy. I welcome all our esteemed speakers to join us on stage for the session. I request Dr. Rachna Arora, Team Leader EU REI and Circular Economy Solutions to Prevent Marine Litter GIZ to kindly moderate the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure always to be here with the CII Sustainability Summit. And I think the session which is actually right now we're going to discuss is quite a prominent project when it comes to circular economy development in the country. This is a EU-India partnership called EU Resource Efficiency Initiative. And a lot of you are already familiar about what we have been trying to do. I will just give a brief of course, an introduction to what the project is all about. This is, as I called it, EU Resource Efficiency Initiative. And this initiative actually started in 2016 and 17, which is funded by the European Union. We have 4 consortium partners to this. CII is one of our industry association partner. GIZ, and I represent GIZ. So GIZ is the lead organization implementing this project together with our partners, as I mentioned, CII, Adelphi, which is our German partner, as well as TERI, the Energy Resources Institute. This partnership has actually brought forward a lot of action and momentum when it comes to circular economy. If you see the title of the project, it's actually resource efficiency, and that was 6 years back. Now everyone talks about circular economy. So there has been a progress. Of course, circular economy and resource efficiency are not terms which a lot of experts would agree that there are commonalities, but there are commonalities when we talk of 2016, because that's how the agenda and progression actually happened. We are now also designing our phase 3 with the European Union and with the Indian side, with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The panel that is here today is actually quite interesting, because when it comes to circular economy, we actually talk about innovation, we actually talk about partnerships, refer to collaborations between the state and the center, collaborations between the public and the private sector. So there has been, I think, a lot of progress around this space, and that's how the session also has been designed in. To begin with, I would actually invite Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee to actually share the discussion around circular economy. I would also give a bit of a background to why electronics and why, of course, circular economy in the electronic space. Again, this is, I would say, in 2019, when under this project, we actually had Niti Aayog and the Ministry of Electronics and IT to actually develop a strategy on circular economy in the electronic space. And a lot of discussion which we have seen, and in fact, electronics was one of the first sector in this country to actually introduce extended producer responsibility. Now, when it comes to EPR, it's a policy regulation, a policy instrument, which actually promotes businesses, which actually promotes the producers to be liable for the products, not just the end-of-life operation, but also the entire design, physical as well as the financial responsibility of the product once it is launched till its end of life, and also looking at areas of concerns which all of us realize are obsolescence rates, high dependence, and of course, quite a lot like changing models and others. So a lot of global as well as Indian discussion is not only around the e-waste legislation, it's also around circular economy discussion. And that's where the work that Ministry of IT and Niti Aayog and the Ministry of Environment actually steered was, how do you kind of elaborate the term of EPR and introduce elements of circular economy in the product once it is designed, and look at product liability in a much more kind of an upstream approach. So Dr. Chatterjee, what do you think has been, I would say, a precursor to this collaboration between EU India, and how do you see the discussion on circular economy in the electronics and IT sector?
Thank you, Dr. Rachna. It is my pleasure to share the views of Ministry of Electronics and IT, which we are carrying out for last 2 decades almost. We are happy to be associated with EU REI program to shape up our draft on action plan of circular economy in 2021. We have found just end-of-life management of electronic waste may not help. Unless you are starting the design of the product for recycling friendly or refurbishment friendly, it is very difficult to actually track the secondary raw material entire value chain and use those secondary raw material in the our economic growth. As you all know, electronics is a most high-tech product. It requires different resource material. As you all know, there are smartphone uses 69 elements of the periodic table. So if you are talking about India scenario, where we have 500 million smartphone, maybe users are 300 million, but we are aspiring to have the entire digital India governance, entire country. So we'll be requiring smartphone of 1100 million, or rather 2000 million, because many guys will be using 2 phones. So where is the material? And this space of electronic development or our economy requires by 2030 15 billion tons of resource material. Of course, we will not be growing the same gradient. We will be faster gradient now. So to aspire for a $5 trillion economy. So circular economy is the only solution for the entire story. If you see different data, for 2021 data is showing 13 billion of smartphones are unused, because products are designed inherent obsolescence. So after 3 years or 4 years, you are anyway leaving the smartphone. And we are not utilizing that, because there are a lot of issues circular economy teaches us, that for the bulk consumer, why we require a device? Why you are not going for a service model? Okay? So these are the things we have included in our action plan. We are talking about smart design or green product in the country. This green product actually will ensure whatever the PLI or spec scheme we are promoting for our electronic industry, they should be rated as a CE indicator, circular economy indicators. Can you develop that type of things? Or can you ensure that in future products we will have at least 10% or 15% of the secondary raw material? So can we rate our brand according to that? This story is not going to help unless you are having a green skill warrior in the market. Unless you are having a sustainable recycling practice in the country. Unless, as Rachna mentioned, the RE, resource efficiency of each and every stage, where we may require a security audit or a process audit, because we might have 300 to 400 recyclers in the country, but still the 95% of materials are going to the informal hand, and we are losing the resource material. So our ministry, after that action plan, we have started concentrating on 3 verticals: creating low-cost technology in the country, creating skilled manpower in the country, and trying to develop affordable machines in the country. And also we have started a spec scheme where 25% of the equipment for the recycler will be subsidized, so the state-of-art facility can come into the country. So there are many initiatives we have taken for last 10 years almost, so to sustain this growth of our electronics industry in a green fashion. So that was the brief initial introduction I can offer from our ministry side. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Chatterjee. And I think if you all just look at the context that Dr. Chatterjee actually shared, so a sectoral ministry actually talking about material intensity when it comes to the mobile phones itself. That's something that he's highlighting, and that's where the strategy action plan is actually focusing also. The other element that was mentioned was about a new model of how you are actually accessing the materials. You refer to product as a subscription services. I'm sure something like this, even if we talk about a B2B segment, would actually have a lot of requirements around tendering procedures and others. So would you like to just highlight how is the action taken by the ministry in terms of mobilizing at least, if not a B2C segment, even in terms of raising that awareness, preparing those instruments where product as a subscription, because circular economy, you actually talk about different economic models. And this is something when it comes to automobiles, electronics, the access of product is actually something where you can actually make a change. And if the government does it, then of course it brings a lot of incremental shift. So would you like to just share a bit around this approach as well?
We have a committee discussing about that product subscription model, and we have found there are some resistance from the manufacturers. So what we have done, we have listed out some of the products like Xerox machine, your laptop, desktop, and photocopiers. So we have found that these are the 5 items we have identified which can be taken as a subscription model. And there is a GEM portal, as you all know, in government. So there is an option. Now those 5 products we have listed in the GEM, whether any government organization, state government or the central government or government offices or the government societies, they can interested to purchase the service model, so they can go to the GEM, and those products are also one of the option. So now we have, initially we thought that it should be mandatory, but we have not done mandatory, but this option we have kept in our GEM portal. So this step we have taken in last 2 years.
Thanks for highlighting that. So moving forward, I think one of the kind of a discussion that you have actually seen is from a national ministry on one sector. And you can imagine the current priorities of the government of India is around 11 sectors. This is one sector that we are actually talking about. Similarly, there are other when it comes to steel or aluminum or action around waste itself. There is a committee on dry waste and waste waste. So there are these sectoral ministries and action with each of them. In fact, we are also developing an action plan for the Department of Telecom. So it's not even just electronics, there's also Department of Telecom who's interested to actually have their own circular economy strategy, which is about the mobile subscription as well as the data itself. So that's something that we will park for now. But yeah, moving forward, in terms of another partnership, moving from a sector to action on the ground, which is a state government, because a lot many times the actions on circular economy are where you actually require momentum and actions by the state government. So we have the government, Mr. Mahesh Patil here from Goa State Pollution Control Board. And again, a bit of a background, Goa is actually one of the first states in India to actually have a circular economy strategy. This was released in 2020. And this was also done under the EU Resource Efficiency Initiative. And sir, I would like you to highlight what have been the priorities of this strategy, and also how do you think from 2020 to 2023, how have things progressed when it comes to the actions on specific areas or on interventions that the Goa State Pollution Control Board is doing currently when it comes to circular economy? Yeah.
Thank you, Rachna, and thank you, CII, for giving me this opportunity to share some of the initiatives that we have started in Goa. Of course, in 2020, the first circular economy as a policy of the state was adopted in Goa, and this was possible because we had a tie-up. GIZ was supporting us along with the EU and TERI. So it was something we wanted to get a global practices. Now, beyond this was active support from government who wanted to have all sustainable practices. And secondly, most of you are aware, Goa is, God bestowed its nature beauty, and our economy runs on tourism. So we wanted to maintain tourism, and we have seen also many of the impact which are happening. So in this process, we wanted to get best of the global practices, and that was a total stakeholder consultation process, and we evolved a circular economy policy of Goa, in which 3 key areas were highlighted. One was construction demolition waste, which is because a lot of old buildings, old houses being demolished and new houses were coming up. And Goa being a small state, very eco-sensitive, we have a seashore, beach area. Other side, we have Western Ghat, and very little area to be, could be developed. But second was tourism. We get 8 to 10 times of our population as a tourist in Goa. And along with the economy, we get a lot of other, like plastic was a major issue, a tourism-related issue. And third was, we have fish net, like it's a marine littering. We, again, being a coastal state, we had a lot of fish nets, and the fishermen were concerned in the past good old days, but today, with the competitiveness, economic pressure, they would just leave away the fishing nets, and the impact I do not have to elaborate here with you all. So these 3 course area were identified as focus area, and 2020 we did, but 2 years COVID time, we couldn't take it forward. But again, now we have concentrated on entire circular economy and looking forward what best we could do. So for the fishing net, again, we have tied up with GIZ and TERI, and already we have started awareness drive with the fishing net, using technology for collection, disposal, and getting them best market source. That means they will not, the ghost nest, which they would throw it otherwise elsewhere, they're getting back into the economy. Construction demolition waste, we have also taken this forward, and we are tied up with an institute called Syntec from Norway. A plant has been established for using this construction demolition waste to making some bricks and reusing for the construction material. And third is tourism. Yes, we are looking at the Green Co rating. We are looking at the Green Key initiatives, and entire stakeholder engagement process is on. So I think even I'm as a regulator for Chairman Pollution Control Board, but I feel there's a time where we have to be collaborate. We have to get together, and then only we can solve this problem. Problems are huge in the field of environment, and we can pick up the best practices available, maybe modify and suit to the local condition, we can do it. So in short, we are very keen, focused in circular economy, and we would try to use all possible options, that is regulation, consultation, and amendment, and having a new technology.
Thank you. Thanks, sir, for highlighting the elements of the circular economy strategy for Goa. I would like in the recent, I would say in 2 months or so, in the past 2 months, Goa has also been in quite a limelight about announcing instruments around the EPR plastic packaging as well. Some specific actions that you are taking around. Would you also like to elaborate? Because as you mentioned, if there is a tourist influx, your entire population is kind of 3 times to the tourist population. So how do you actually enforce a system on maybe plastic packaging reduction or collection? So there has been a lot of news. Would you like to highlight a bit around that space as well?
Yes, as I said, government and also public support is very keen. And this is centered around 2 important activities. One is our economy, as you rightly said. Our now 60% economy is on tourism. At the same time, is highly ecologically fragile. So we have decided from the studies which we had in circular economy and the key focus area, we are for coming a scheme called DRS. Probably must be aware, there's called deposit refund scheme. If some of you have traveled Goa, maybe in 80s or 90s, if you buy a bottle of beer, you need to deposit 5 rupees. And once you return back, and you will get it. But that was done by Kingfisher in those days, but they had a monopoly, and bottle would go back. Today, with a competitor and many brand owners coming in, that system has stopped. So what we decided, just concluded Legislative Assembly 10 days ago, we amended the Goa Biodegradable Act, and we included all non-biodegradable items like liquor bottles, like the glass, plastic, PVC, Tetra Paks, and multi-layer plastic in the act. And we also said in that act, all this will come under DRS scheme, Deposit Refund Scheme. So we are working on these aspects. Possibly within next, now act is amended, rules will be framed, and we are looking for an agency or the operator who will implement DRS. So with this, we expect that any product you buy, they always, one is an incentive, and second is a danda, carrot and a stick. So stick, as a pollution control board or the government, we can't do it. But carrot makes, I think, more, lucrative for the client. So if you just give an example, if you buy a 10 rupees or 15 rupees a mineral water bottle, and if you ask to put a deposit of 10 rupees extra, probably you will not litter or throw it out the bottle, because you're having 4 bottles, you are 40 rupees at stake. But however, technology has to be supported. So we have we'll be using, we have done a lot of studies there, where UPI, there'll be all bottles, all plastic will be coded. There'll be a lot of collection center, and I'm very happy, as I said, is a collaborative effect. IOCL, HPCL has already come forward, and they said they will lend their all petrol pumps as a collection center. So it's an initiative from them, a public sector company, and we are also talking with the 5-star hotels. Incidentally, Goa also has a very good system, thanks to our former Chief Minister, Manohar Parrikarji. It's a Goa Waste Management Corporation, where is a very state-of-the-art waste management plant, and they have a collection center at most of the place. So we are going to use those places to collect this waste. So there'll be, in short, all non-biodegradable items will have a code. There will be a deposit. There'll be QR code, and you will be able to redeem that QR code, your money immediately through your direct account. I'll not go into details of the scheme. Secondly, if even somebody doesn't use it, today you just throw it out on kabaddi wala, what you call pick up, and the plastic is waste, and the recyclability goes down. But here, they will not pick up for the bottle to recycle, but to claim that deposit money. And we estimated that will be big success. We know that Europe, Germany is leading, I think around 85–90% they are getting back. Scandinavian countries are doing well. So we hope that within next 3 months, the system will be in place in Goa. There also we are talking with some of the European companies who are well established in this technology, systems, and again, our system like UPI would play an important role.
Thank you. And I think here, when it comes to circular economy, again, we have seen innovation. This, I would say, is a real policy innovation, where you can see announcement of EPR is there. We know that it has been legislated, and of course, everyone is to implement. But to enable that, you need these supporting policy instruments. So deposit refund scheme is quite evident. We also had it in India. We also have it in Europe. At least these examples, and I think as you mentioned, I can imagine, so Department of Excise, several other departments would actually be involved for running this scheme, and I think that's where we see at least policy innovation happening in a space, and thanks for taking up this initiative, and yeah, I think it sounds quite interesting, especially from the circular economy, at least from collection point of view. Of course, recycling technologies is another like a policy side which is required, but that's, I think, will come up once you have a collection stream enforced. That's interesting. Moving forward, we would actually have, or at least I would say in the discussions on circular economy, and also yesterday when we were attending one of the sessions with India Plastic Pact, discussions have been around on primary material versus virgin material, recycled material, low specifications, or even if they're high in their standards, how do we endorse the product, and how do we look at a product which is certified, and of course pricing is another issue. So moving forward, I would now invite Kate. She actually represents the global network. Yeah, I would request Kate, first of all, to highlight what is the prominence within your network, the global network, around circular economy. How do you see the momentum coming up, and what are the current priorities when it comes to the circular economy, standardization and certification process? Yeah.
Thanks, Rashna, and thanks CII for having me. Great to have a focus on the circular economy and have business manufacturing in the room, because it is complex depending on a product or service that we're talking about, and that's where the standards come in. In fact, we heard that from Bloomberg yesterday as one of their pillars, that critical to have a look at standards as a mechanism. So circular economy and standards. So I represent the Global Eco-Labelling Network, and we are a member body for excellence in eco-labelling. And in regards to the eco-labels, we're talking about a certification mark for a circular economy eco-label, also known as a life cycle eco-label or ISO 14024. What's important about that is it's easier for business to know when something actually is circular, because there is the complexity of a whole supply chain solution, and it is hard to track. So how do you know when you're a manufacturer in terms of your inputs that something is recycled, that something is best practice, and also if you're in the procurement side and retail distribution, how do you know? So the certification mark, so the eco-labelling schemes that our members are leaders in that space, and it's at a product or service level. One of those members, of course, is the European Union and their EU flour label that you may see, and CII has Green Pro. So there's the opportunity in terms of partnership, is where we have eco-labelling schemes working together in order to drive best practice solutions and to define what good looks like. So in regards to transparency of standards as a manufacturer or a distributor, you can be really clear on what good looks like, from extraction of those materials, encouragement of recycled input, as well as what I would say is circular economy plus, making sure things like energy use in the take-back, recycling of a new life is considered, as well as health and chemicals. And they're areas that we are seeing significant leadership in Europe around. There is a bit of a setting of a benchmark, if you like, in regards to what good looks like. And so therefore they do play an important role amongst our eco-labelling members as well in terms of partnering. Of course, collaboration takes all of us, so different sectors require business and your industries to lean in and have that conversation with us. And the Global Eco-Labelling Network, which is a not-for-profit, 30 years next year, really encourage you all to have that conversation with us. Those standards development do require industry-led conversations and consensus building so that we can actually make it possible. So it is an economic metric in regard, and a lever in regards to rewarding best practice and those manufacturers that are doing the right thing. In regards to the pull-through and some of the challenges we heard about, you will see particular standards by Gen members, things like recycled content, packaging, some have packaging standards, electronics is really key. And one of the roles that the certification plays is making sure that that manufacturer has a take-back product stewardship responsibility. So we are making sure those raw materials are getting back for reuse, and that's critical. Some of our other members have waste services standards. We did see huge problems, particularly in Australia where I was there. We developed one because we knew that some of the recycling was being said that it was getting there, but it actually wasn't. So that's one key problem and an area that all of our members can bring through collaboration and cooperation and adopt standards and mechanisms. And we've heard how Europe is doing that also with their take back. But we also need manufacturers to look at the inputs, and that's why all of our standards require, where possible, those recycled inputs. The built environment, of course, steel and cement and concrete, you know, high energy materials are really critical as well when we're looking at whole planet, one planet living. So eco-labels are a mechanism for that. Using the acronym, I just wanted to share, if we think of RAISE, the responsible, If we think of SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, and Goal 12, responsible production and consumption is key, but how do you know? Looking for a certification mark that is transparent and rewards manufacturers doing the right thing. Accelerated, I would encourage it's not just one thing. We need to make sure these circular economy products last, are fit for purpose, and also good for the end user. Innovation, and of course, starting with the end in mind to make sure there is no end, to have that continual infinite loop is important. And sustainable, how to get all aspects and equitable, of course. Let's reward those manufacturers. And using those transparent standards to work with your own supply chain to help transition and transform. Specifically then around Europe, as I mentioned, there is significant leadership in that space and their standards. Our members continue to strive to work with them through a mutual recognition process to adopt those standards and to continue to raise that benchmark of what is expected. And that helps with import-export considerations and economic return, which is really critical. We've been working with them particularly around the Green Directive and initiatives that are coming out there where they're being very clear on where their benchmarks are. And so having standards for that, having certification marks for that really help industry lead that way. So I might leave it there for now, but yeah, really welcome the conversation with business. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Just a connecting question to, I think you highlighted the points around supply chain. And of course, we have seen some of the standards coming around, at least in India, referring to the waste recycling and other. And of course, CII Green Pro has been also doing across different sectors. But my question is largely when you refer to the EU eco-label, like if you refer to that, say for instance in our discussions with Ministry of Electronics, like during the conversations on action plan and even now with the telecom, the companies or the industry usually feels, no, we have a label which is largely the energy efficiency label. It isn't a material intensity, and now you refer to something around supply chain, access of material and the clean supply chain as such. What would be this new label? Just to be like, is it something in discussions over there and our members agreeing? Because in our conversations with the electronics as well as with the telecom industry, there is a resistance. There is a lot of resistance when it comes to introducing a new, because they feel energy efficiency or these labels actually addresses the entire, which is, I think, quite different. So yeah, could you just highlight that?
Yeah, thank you. There's a conversation really how we position the ISO 14024 as the circular economy eco-label, and it is known by that, but people who understand the standards, but perhaps less known. In essence, energy efficiency isn't enough. I mean, sadly, we know that we've got more to do. We do need to look at resources. We do need to look at, chemical use. And so when we're looking at what bit to focus on and whether we need multiple labels, that adds to the complexity. Environmental product declarations, life cycle analysis, for manufacturers and for business, it gets more and more complex. If we actually look at every stream and aspect of impacts of a product, it's beyond complex, it also gets very expensive. So really in terms of, do we need a new label? No, in my opinion, we need to keep making sure that all of those aspects are rolled into one existing standard and eco-label and certified independent mark, and keep working with industry to raise that benchmark to make sure that we're playing in the field.
Thanks for addressing it, and yeah, we come back with a few more. But yeah, moving forward, as we just discussed about the industry, I would actually like to move, and that's where the project has, like the EU Resource Efficiency Initiative has also been trying to get few industry members, which are also all across different EU member states. So I would now like to hear from you, Rahul, specifically maybe in the packaging plastic industry itself. How do you see, there is a lot of discussion around EPR, of course, that's the biggest discussion right now. But still, when it comes to eco-design, the EPR kind of a directive very clearly talks about percentage recycled content and instruments which can promote more of upstream. So how is the preparedness and what is it that you specifically are addressing? Yeah.
Thank you, Rachana. Good morning to everyone. Happy to be here, and it was really nice to hear all these, esteemed panelists and the work that they're doing. Coming to packaging, so just for the benefit of everyone, I represent Huhtamaki, which is a Finnish company, and we are a global major into flexibles packaging. When we talk of circular economy in packaging, first, looking at the subject sustainability and circular economy, what I feel is we have designed packaging systems which are linear. And if you look into, say, whatever sustains in nature, it's always circular. You take a simple example of the correlation between, say, a lithosphere and biosphere. There are volcanic eruptions, and then there is sedimentation, and there is circularity in it. But this is something that's missing in our industrial systems. And to achieve this and to sustain this, I think what we need to do is first design for circularity. I think Mr. Sandeep also spoke about it from the electronics point of view, and that's what's been our main focus. So at Huhtamaki, we have come out with a program called as Blue Loop. Blue represents our logo, and loop is the circularity around it. But what we are trying to do is solve the challenge of non-recyclable packaging. I think Mr. Mahesh also spoke of MLP, right? So the biggest challenge that we have today in the country is flexibles packaging waste, and majority of it is MLP because it cannot be recycled, it cannot be brought back into the value chain of packaging. Now coming to packaging itself, I think sometimes packaging is taken for granted because it seems that's something always there. But if you take out packaging, you take out the protection that it offers to the product that it is holding. Now, if the packaging functionally is not good, it is going to spoil the product inside, especially food for that matter. So the functionality is important. So you need to maintain the functionality, but you need to design it for circularity also. And that's where majority of the innovations are coming out from our end. So under the Blue Loop that I was talking of, we are focusing on 3 key materials, which is polypropylene, PP, polyethylene, and paper. And we are trying to develop solutions which are monomaterial based. So we don't have multi-layered packaging. We don't have foreign layers like metallized layers or paper layers, etc. And because of the monomaterial structures, they become recyclable in the infrastructure in the country, which is majorly mechanical recycling. Right. The other aspect that comes along with this is sometimes when people talk of making packaging recyclable, they think that it might lead to over designing of packaging solutions. So you might ultimately end up using a lot more polymer than MLP. So that's the other challenge that we want to address hand in hand. It's not just that we are going to make it recyclable, but we also want to reduce the number of layers in the structures so that the total material usage is reduced. Now, this is the program that we are not just driving in India, but it's a global enterprise-wide program, and that's where the partnerships come in. Because with the EU, now, like you spoke of EPR, right? But EPR explicitly is not calling out of regarding design of the packaging. But if you say the PPWR that's coming up in Europe, that's something that is being discussed over there. So the solutions that we are designing are always hand in hand. So the R&D teams in India and the R&D teams in Europe are working to define solutions that are probably recyclable, not just in India, but in Europe. And so it's about solving a problem not just relevant to India, but throughout the world. So that's the key when it comes to partnerships. The second aspect I would say where partnerships really play a part is while we are making the solutions recyclable, with the regulations around EPR, we also need to speak about the recycled content inclusion, right? And that's another key driver that's been pushing manufacturers like us, the brands as well. Now, in the Europe, there has always been a lot of work that has already been done when it comes to inclusion of recycled content. And they have some really good practices around quality standards, around, so for example, there's a test called as substance of interest. I mean, sometimes when you include recycled content, there's unnecessary elements that get added. So how we can ensure that they don't come up in our solution. So just as an example. So that's where again the partnerships help in kind of pulling out best practices, no need to reinvent the wheel and already establish what's been established elsewhere. And third part is, I think, so you spoke of India Plastics Pact, right? So with this, our innovation capabilities, our vision of making our solutions recyclable by 2030, we are also tying up through the India Plastics Pact with other brands, other manufacturers, other people in the value chain. So not just brands and converters, but say recyclers, waste pickers, on how we can establish this innovation in the ecosystem of India, which is so vivid and vast. So yeah, I mean, just to conclude, this is where we are. Like I said, sometimes we end up focusing only on collection, segregation, and then end-of-life treatment of packaging waste. But first, if you don't start with designing it right for circularity, it might lose the focus, and that's where we are looking at.
Thanks, Rahul. Just a connecting element, since you mentioned about eco-design and a global R&D approach as well. I would say the government has been leading the discussion on circular economy, on bioeconomy. Would you like to shed some light on how your company addresses in terms of biomaterials and
So I think biomaterials is an interesting space, but I also feel there is a lot of perception-based information around it rather than science-based. And what we as a company are looking at is making use of biomaterials when LCA studies say that they are actually beneficial. So for example, globally we have this tie-up with Nespresso, so Nespresso globally has these coffee pods, right? And so we have a exclusive tie-up where all the coffee pods are now compostable. So our LCA studies depicted that, you know, this makes sense as a solution for that particular application. But I would not say that biomaterial is, so even in circularity in packaging, I don't think there is a singular solution that fits the bill to all applications. For every application with a context of the local infrastructure, I think every solution differs. And whenever it makes sense through scientific studies, that's where we actually propose it. Where it does not make sense, we don't propose it.
Thanks. Thanks for highlighting that. I've already got a signal to actually wrap up our session. I would just suggest that since we are actually talking about EU-India partnerships, some of you are quite involved in that entire process. And since we are designing our phase 3, I would just take a few minutes from all of you to actually hear from you. Starting with you, Dr. Chatterjee. How do you think and what do you think could be our elements to still engage? We have a lot of, like, at least from the European Union, this joint declaration of intent on RE, resource efficiency and circular economy, which was signed in 2020. And the project is actually one of the main pillars to lead that implementation. EU member states are pretty much active, and we can actually draw a lot of lessons and best practices around that. So how do you think, what could be our priority areas in the next phase as well? Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Rajna. Actually, if you see the transformation from our linear concept to the circular economy started just few years in the country. And as you mentioned, your initial starting point, introductory point, that our manufacturers or producers are not aligned yet. So there are a lot of, doubts that if the secondary raw material will be high quality, they can be used in the manufacturing process. And still we do not know if really we are introducing this concept in our PLI scheme or spec scheme, how our manufacturing promotion will affect. So we should learn more from Europe. European Union done a lot of works for material tracking. There are material passport. They have their own critical material CRM list. Based on that, they are framing their policies and framework. So those things are still learning for our country. And I think long-term EU REI program would be beneficial for India, especially the electronics and telecom verticals, because this learning will take another 10 years if I see. Then some of the products will start coming one of the or few percentage of secondary raw material as a product. So unless that is happening, this EPR, as you rightly mentioned, the policy piece not being adhered to actual, realization of the circular economy. So a lot of work required to be done, how to define green product in the market, Indian market. And since we are growing very fast, so the accumulation of the electronic products end of life will be high. Manufacturers, for their profit margin, will try to come up with the new product in the market. The forced obsolescence is a reality in our society. So how to convince the manufacturers, distributors, so that the green products should be, pushed into the market. We should think over for the product life, how it would be sustainable for our society. So these are the things still we are, I think is a very premature stage. We require another a few more EU REI type of initiatives in India to actually, and I think you have done one project for us with Toxic Link that is also very, very important for us. So we'll be using some of the learning from that study report. So that at least we as a ministry want that try to get a C index adaptable by our manufacturer who are manufacturing, because our ministry's main job to promote manufacturing. But we are also interested to do the sustainable manufacturing in the country. So this is a two different bucket. Somehow we should understand how it would be done, because every geographies might be having a different type of understanding. We want how India should do this. So there I think EU REI having a greater role to play, and few more projects will definitely help us.
Sure. Thank you, and great to hear that. Moving forward to you, Mr. Patil, how do you think this partnership could be further strengthened, and what could be like new areas or initiatives from the state priorities that we can actually look at in the future outlook? Yeah.
See, as I elaborated earlier, the entire involvement of circular economy by India, we were practitioners of circular economy, as we all know. But over involvement, like plastic and economy growing, things have changed. So I personally believe there is nothing, why to reinvent the wheel? So your circular economy, your partnership evolve in studying, getting our circular economy in place. Second level, which we are going now of a fishnet. I think third is we can progress this partnership in getting the technology and how we can blend it ours. Just for example, now we want to go DRS system. I think Tomra is a company who is based in Norway, are expert or known for the reverse vending machine. We don't have that technology in India. Probably other technology what is available, can we partner in getting this technology first? Whereas our UPI, unique identification code, is become celebrated across the globe, that we'll use this escrow account, get that money transferred into an individual. So how we can blend this technology? And secondly, while we are framing a legislation, this legislation we have framed in Europe or other areas much in advance. What are the learning? We can jointly do it. So we can fine tune the learning from the past, and that way we can take forward and we don't commit those mistakes which have happened in the past, and which being in India, we also know our local condition. So I think there's a lot of scope for doing the partnership, getting technology, learning, and that will reduce our time in implementation.
Thanks a lot. Kate, from your side, specific messages?
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think a lot of scope for collaboration and scale. So it's also about where our own areas of excellence are. So Europe, particularly in the eco-label space, are fantastic at consumer-facing products. But where I see excellence here in India is in the built environment and beyond. So there is co-learning. It is about mutual sharing and scaling. And so I think it's also really good to know what we're good at and how do we leverage platforms through business, through partnerships, through Gen to respond quickly. So, electronics, there are in Scandinavia, we have two members there, one Scandinavian, one American, which are international. We know what good looks like. Europe is doing a great job at setting that benchmark. So we have a roadmap, and we also know where the excellence is here and in Europe. So it's about sharing, partnering, and scaling quick so that we do actually respond to crises.
Thanks. Good to hear that. Rahul, from your side, how do you see it both as a company and also from the sector per se? How do you see partnerships further from the EU as well as the Indian side?
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, I think I briefly spoke about it before. Two aspects, I think, in terms of, I mean, it's not just, you know, that when we think of partnership, we feel that, you know, the technology will come from Europe into India. But our experience is some of our R&D teams in India have been able to develop solutions that can solve issues in the world. So it's a two-way partnership. Wherever we have the strength in terms of resources, like I said, I spoke of Blue Loop. A lot of solutions have been developed in India, which are being propagated in India, but elsewhere in Europe as well. Whereas when it came to recycled content inclusion, there is probably more work done in Europe, and that's something that we are pulling up in India. So it's always, there are certain strengths that each team has, and I think as a sector also we need to do that. There are certain good works or good things that are established in Europe which can come into India and vice versa. Other aspects is, you know, briefly touching that, you know, we came out with a social initiative, which is what we call as a Huhtamaki Foundation, where we have set up a MLP recycling plant. So although we are designing for recyclability, we know that, you know, heritage wastes exist of MLP. So since there are not a lot of investments going into MLP recycling, we set up this plant in Khopoli in Maharashtra. And the technology that we are using for recycling is, or the process that we are setting up for this recycling, there's a lot of inputs coming in from the European experts. So it's not one solution. As a sector, I think there are good points with the European structure, there are good points with the Indian structure, and this dialogue will only help the overall packaging ecosystem, not just in India, but globally.
Thanks a lot. Do we have a minute for some open questions? Yeah, okay, maybe 2 questions, yeah. If you can pass the mic there, yeah. Oh, okay, sorry.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shweta Dubey, and I work as a purchasing analyst at Dana India. And my question is open to the panel regarding, we talked about some initiatives related to how are you planning to take some initiatives? You gave an example about Goa, that earlier the bottles had to be submitted back and Kingfisher had taken this initiative. So you talked about some more initiatives coming forward. I want to ask that how do you plan to market or create awareness about these initiatives, and how do you plan to impose these awareness or activities to the industrial scenario? Are you going to impose any rules and regulations to tackle the rigidity of the industrial people, or would you take some other initiative to market it?
Okay, I'll quickly answer it, although I think this is for the panel. But from the project perspective, we do a lot of awareness sessions until we close the project in December. We actually have a lot of them packed, but we will connect on that bilaterally. But moving to you, Dr. Chatterjee, would you like to mention about the awareness program that METI was running for 5 years on e-waste? So would you like to mention something on that?
Yes,
and maybe for you also on the state level.
Impacts, we started by Honorable Prime Minister's call that we should have a pan-India awareness program of electronic waste in 2015. From 2015 to 2020, we did for 5 years for 9 different stakeholders. So we have developed course content in Indian languages as well as Hindi and English. And we have created master trainers and carried out this major 30 cities in 30 states and UT. And it was very successful program. Almost 71.7 million citizens has been sensitized during that call. And you can go and have a look on our website www.greeny.gov.in. So still the program is going in a sustainable manner. The contents can be downloaded from there, and they are being utilized by those champions, Greeny champions. They're the master trainers. It is their lists are also there in that website. And also during that program, we have done a lot of course content developed in NCRT, SWAYAM platform and Diksha platform. They are still utilizing. So teachers are getting trained every year. So this is a mass movement. And also through cinema hall, we have touch-based almost 23 crores Indian during that time. So it was a sustainable program along with the industry and industry association and the different organization also joined. It was a mass movement, and we should think that similar type of program on circular economy should be initiated.
Okay, I just have a follow-up question on that.
Maybe we'll have to take that later. I just have one more question. I'm sorry, but you can just speak over the tea break. Yeah, sorry.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rahul Banerjee, and I'm the managing director at Ryerson House. We are a policy research think tank focusing on foreign policy planning, including bi- and multilateral cooperation. So an idea, I managed to interact with the German Chancellor during his February visit this year. An idea we explored was India and Germany, in particular in India and European Union, to make it wide, coming together and partnering for Africa. How do you see that happening, especially in the field of circular economy?
Okay, so currently we were restricting to EU-India partnerships, but I think I would not like to elaborate much on it, but as GI said, we have several engagements across the globe, and Africa is one of our country as well. So maybe we can again just connect bilaterally there, but I think with the G20, since the circular economy was a top priority under the climate and environment vertical, we have also seen a lot of discussion, especially on the EPR portal and the initiatives that Indian government has actually showcased. So the sectors have been on common interest, and especially with the industry, the G20 countries, like in the Chennai meeting, the ministerial meeting, they actually agreed to have a EU, like a REC industry coalition, which was announced and launched. So I think that's one area where all the G20 countries, including Africa, is also partnering to that as well. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, so now to quickly just, it's difficult to summarize, but I would still like to mention one priority element which emerged from all the speakers and our panelists was about eco-design, was about a lot of elements which are upstream. We hardly spoke about waste recycling per se, and I think that's one of the message if you want to really take forward, is that circular economy is not about better recycling or all of that, but of course the policy initiatives at both the state and the national level, and this is one sector, there's a lot happening with other sectors as well in the circular economy action plans of each of them. I'm hoping, and we're also hearing some of that, but I think that's one of the precursor and a kind of a movement that we are seeing around in the space of circular economy transition. So these are just few examples, but there's many more initiatives that have been taken up, especially across with different kinds of partnerships between the private sector and the public, state partnerships, and also within the different ministries. So I think that's somewhere we have seen a bit of a silos breaking as well. But yeah, thanks to all of you for your interesting inputs, and over to you. Thanks to CII also for giving us space. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we conclude this session. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all our esteemed guests for the insightful discussion. I kindly request all our speakers to gather for a group photograph. The front of the... Is it okay? Oh, it's okay.